Welcome to the Gilbert.K Show. Buckle up, because today we've got a true audio mastermind in the house, Mike Hall. With nearly 30 years of experience, this music and sound design wizard has shaped films, records, and voices across the globe. From crafting epic scores to mentoring the next wave of creators, Mike is all about making sound come alive. So crank up the volume, because we're diving into the world of music, movies, and pure sonic magic.
Hey Mike, welcome to the show. How are you
I'm doing
today?
great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on the show. Before we dive in, let's take a moment to check a clip from your
Yeah,
video. Okay, let's move on to the questions. Are you
sure.
ready? Yeah. Could you start telling me a little bit about film scoring? What does film scoring mean?
To me, I think it's the added emotions that you want to enhance the characters. Sometimes, and it depends on whether um, what perspective you want. Like, uh, do you want the audience to know what the characters are feeling, or what the environment portrays, or maybe even what you want the audience themselves to experience. So it's just the
Mhm.
enhancement of the visual to me.
Yeah, using music.
Mhm.
Um, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, great. Um, Could you start telling me a little bit about yourself and what sparked your interest in film scoring or film composition?
Well, I started pretty young where before I got into music, I wanted to write movies. I was a little kid. I spent my summers writing my movie stories, and of course my dad always had records around. And so, I would play records as I'm writing, thinking, um, yeah, this is probably what the music would sound like during this scene,
Right.
having no idea about anything. And then when I got to be a
Mm-hmm.
teenager, you know, I forgot all about music or doing any of that stuff, as far as films and stuff. I thought, once you start getting interested in girls, you're thinking of ways to kind of impress them, and maybe playing electric guitar would do that, and so I got into,
Yeah.
playing in bands and stuff, and still having no idea, I thought that the idea of coming up with music for film, film composing, that's what the college academic smart people do, I'm a rock and
Right.
roller guy, and so I did that, and played in my bands, and I got into recording because, out of necessity, because my bands were always poor, and we didn't have the money to kind of go to a real studio. So I built my own studio
Mm-hmm.
and did all that, and ended up producing my own band's records. And pretty soon I started producing other bands, and got into mixing and mastering. I did some work for record labels and stuff. And then one day I was contacted by a film director, I think from Germany or Belgium, and he wanted
Mm-hmm.
me to do the music for his film. And of course, I had no idea what that meant, but I thought, you know what? I'll just
Yeah.
dive in head first, like I do everything else, and see how that works. And
Yeah.
it seemed kind of natural for me, and I kind of went back to when I was a little kid, coming up with music. Oh, well, that would fit for that. And I've been doing
Yeah.
music for film ever since. I still produce
Wow.
records, but most of the work that I do now is music for film.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So what was one of your most memorable experience when starting out?
I think the first one is pretty much, when the director sends you the film and, it's been in theaters and stuff, and there's your music. I'm thinking, that's
Mhm.
weird. I've heard that before, but so the
Yeah.
first few films where, you hear your music in there, that's always a good part. That's always a good
Mhm.
thing.
So how do you describe yourself in 3 words?
Oh, that was a hard question. Uh, I'd have to ask everybody about that. A lot of them would actually tell me because, you don't think of those things about yourself. I'm always interested in
Yeah.
what's the perspective I have on others. But, most of them
Mhm.
would say reliability, you know, uh, that, well, you
Mhm.
haven't missed a day of work in probably 25 years, and you're always good to
Yeah.
work with. The other one, I'd say the other word would be encouraging. And I've
Mhm.
noticed this about it's very important in your life to encourage others, especially starting out. Even if you never
Mhm.
had that so much in your life, it's very important to encourage others. Um, and that's a way where you, as an artist, and your work can live on through others after you're gone.
Mhm.
The other word I would probably say is creative. I'm always
Yeah.
thinking of ideas. Always thinking of, oh, how can I create this? Or someone will come to me with an idea, and then I'll just blow them up with ideas of, creative ideas. Oh, hey, you could
Yeah.
do this, or how about that? So I would say probably those three words.
What's one fact about you that most people might not know?
I'm a huge history buff. I don't know. I just
Yeah.
love history. I love thinking about, what kind of lives maybe our ancestors lived in, or the different times that they lived in. And it
Yeah.
um I don't know how much it pertains to, what I normally do, but um yeah, just very interested in history. And
History. Yeah. And what do you do for fun? Do you have any hobbies? Probably this is your hobby, but do you have other
that's the thing.
hobbies?
It's
And
like any hobbies I would consider, um I would say, well, I mean, I'm always working constantly on something. So any
yeah,
hobby I kind of feel like is a guilty pleasure. Like I love reading books, history books.
yeah,
Um, if I'm watching TV or movies, I love watching old movies or old sitcoms
hmm,
from the 70s that I grew up on. Um,
yeah.
but it seemed like anything that I do outside of work feels like a guilty pleasure because I'm thinking I need to be doing something. I need to be working on something.
Yeah.
It's like,
You can spend more time on film scoring.
yeah, I'm always thinking
Yeah,
I should be doing something now. If I'm in the studio, I'm
yeah.
I'm always thinking, well, who's gonna want this stuff if I'm not, in the office promoting this? And then when I'm in the office
That's
promoting
true.
this, I'm like, well, there's nothing gonna be there to promote if I'm not down in the studio. So it's a constant, you
Yeah,
know, I should be doing something.
yeah. So my next segment is a small game we play on the show. It's called This or That, and the theme is film scoring. In this game, I'll give you two options, and you have to pick the one you like the most or the one that fits you
Okay.
better. There are no wrong answers, and you don't need to explain your choices unless you want to. It's all about quick, fun decisions to show us more about you, for the audience to learn about you. Okay, are you
Yep.
ready? Like, okay. Uh, Scoring a horror movie where every violent screech could make someone jump, or a comedy where your job is to perfectly time the sound of a banana peel slip.
Actually, this is very true in my life. So most of the work that I've done over the last 30 years has been horror, dark dramas. To me, for some reason, that comes easy. The
Yeah,
least amount of films that I've done is comedy. Now, I love
yeah, yeah,
comedies, but I'm always thinking, well, there's so many ways to go with that. I don't know.
yeah.
I don't know what kind of comedy. And the truth of it
Yeah, yeah,
is the two styles, as different as they
yeah,
are, they're actually kind of put together the same way, meaning like
yeah,
they both have um, kind of an impact or a climax to a scene, and if the timing's not there, it doesn't work. So it's
yeah,
kind of weird. I struggle with it because it's like, well, it's they're different styles, but they're the same kind of principle that goes along with the two. But I
yeah.
would pick horror and dark dramas all day long over comedy.
Using a live orchestra and nervously hoping no one trips over a cello, or digital instruments where the only glitch is your cat walking on the keyboard.
Well, that fits another part of my life too. Most of my work is with, the computer, and my big black cat Mindy is always with me. So I have to yell at her for walking on the gear, but you know, it would be great to work with orchestras. I have a little
Yeah,
bit, but most of the budgets just really, and a lot of the projects that I work with just can't afford that
yeah,
direction.
yeah.
Normally, what I do is I kind of do a hybrid approach where I know live players that will incorporate their live performances in the computer,
Mhm.
um, you know, uh, scores. So,
Yeah, 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 yeah. Okay. Composing for an epic space battle with dramatic laser sounds everywhere, or a slow art film where you're scoring the sound of a single leaf falling.
uh, I would say I'm more along the style of soft. I
Yeah.
That's the one thing about every a lot of film composers, they all want to do this huge, loud, epic score. And the truth of it is
Yeah.
the majority of the work that you'll ever do is the soft, you know, um,
Yeah.
uh, supporting the visuals. My,
Mhm.
I would say my favorite composer um, within our time is probably Thomas Newman. Who did
Okay.
The Green Mile, and there's these
Yeah.
I found that you don't have to have this huge giant score to create a huge uh, impact. It's the very soft,
Hmm.
distant pianos, or the distant, the cello that evokes the most emotion in a scene,
Yeah.
and that's kind of where I fall into.
Um, the next one is collaborating with a visionary director who describes everything as more mysterious, or working with an indie filmmaker who keeps asking, "Can we make it sound more like a Star Wars?"
uh, I would say probably the first one. Uh, I
Yeah.
get I get asked, well, I'll get a lot of projects where they'll put the temp music, you know, and they'll
Hmm.
want it, they get so used to that to where it's like, can you make it sound like Star Wars, but not really sound like we stole that? And I'm like,
Yeah, your own version of it. Okay, let's move on to our next clip from your reel. Can you tell me about the journey or inspiration behind your work or project, or any
so
project?
a film will start usually with speaking with the director about the story and the characters, and generally just that initial talk. I can already
Hmm.
start hearing music ideas or themes. Um, but
Hmm.
the best thing to do is just kind of listen to them describing the characters or the stories, and you're basically putting yourself in that story, and it
Hmm.
takes you into, okay, well, what kind of moods and emotion is in these scenes or with this character, and you know,
Yeah.
just from that early stage, I'm already hearing ideas.
How does it work? Do you usually come up with your own ideas and share them with the director, or the director? Sometimes maybe the director, they have a certain way of, they have their ideas, I guess, their
I
vision.
try to be,
How do you work with
yeah,
that?
I try to be as fluid as possible with the director. Or,
Yeah.
everybody has a different way that makes them more comfortable with the way that they work. So I'm open to whatever works best for them. Sometimes they'll send me the script. Um, you
Hmm.
know, Usually what works best for me is talking to them. Sometimes I'll send
Yeah.
links to various styles, like, could you make it sound a lot like Star Wars without making it Star Wars? Here's some links, samples.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but for me, the best idea is speaking with them, getting as much information as possible. Um, I'm
Yeah.
not really giving any information other than I want to hear what the director is telling me, and then from
Hmm.
there I'll take notes, and then I'll put together, a file of several ideas. I'll send it to them, and then they'll let me know which ones, they think fits best, or
Hmm.
what's, and then from there I'll expand on those ideas. And you know,
Yeah.
I want to get as much
So.
ideas, or I want to get in the direction or in the same headspace
Mhm.
as they are as soon as possible, so that, I'm not spending all this time on ideas and then they come back, yeah, that's not quite what we had in mind.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So
Yeah. I was going to ask you at what point you'd like to be involved. I guess before the start the filming, right? When you get the script at the very
I'll
beginning,
have a pretty good
the
idea,
best
and
probably.
then
Yeah.
I just try to work with whatever's most comfortable with them.
Okay, great. So, how did your experiences shape your approach to film scoring?
I think it just, it takes time to kind of, there. One of the things I tell people is that, there's the actual um, skill of creating what you do and the talent you do, but I think the biggest talent is just working with people, and knowing,
Hmm.
making people feel comfortable that, you know this is going to work out, and we're gonna make this work. And you really got to have great people skills. I mean, you could be the best at what you
Yeah.
do, but if people don't feel comfortable with working with you, you'll never work. And I found that
Yeah.
it's like, well, I may not be that good at what I'm doing yet, but if I can make people comfortable and put their minds at ease, that, don't worry, we'll
Hmm.
we'll make this work. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that if you've got a personality that people feel comfortable with, they'll want to keep working with you.
Hmm.
You know,
That's true. That is true. Yeah, good point. How do you? What was one unexpected challenge you faced when you got started? Challenge or
the
challenges,
toughest
like
thing
what?
when you start
Yeah.
is, it's like, I want to take on every job that comes to me. You know, I'm worried
Hmm.
about saying no, or I'm worried about, um, in the beginning, you're worried about being honest and saying, yeah, I don't know anything about that style of music. You know,
Yeah.
you have to be honest up front, with people that, if it's not something that you do, like, I got to tell you up front, I don't do a lot of comedies, so,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
if you say yes to everything, a lot of what you're doing is basically shooting yourself in the foot, because
Yeah.
um, these days, I don't have a problem saying no. not the best
Hmm.
person for this, but I can recommend you to another composer who does. And that's also a good thing too,
Yeah.
because they will do the same thing for you. It's like they'll be saying,
Hmm.
I pretty much only do comedies. I don't do horror movies, but I know a guy who does, you know.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Great tip, actually. How do you see film scoring evolving in the next few years, especially now we have AI?
a lot of people are asking me about AI and they're thinking they're taking our jobs away from us. And I'm thinking, well, it's just
Yeah,
that's what they used to say about synthesizers. They're taking the
that's true.
orchestra's jobs. And I'm like, it's simply a tool,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Um, you know, it's a tool that, how do you make it work for you? You know, um,
Hmm.
if it somehow became something where, if I created like 20 seconds of music and somehow this AI could convert it into, you know, 5 minutes of music, I'd be interested in that. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's nothing to be afraid of. Honestly, I see music scores as not being so much traditional music as it is maybe experimental
Hmm.
sounds. A score
Yeah.
doesn't have to be actual, an orchestra or actually considered music, as it could be
Hmm. Hmm.
sounds or, you know,
That's true.
yeah, percussion sounds or anything really, that.
Yeah, especially the last 2 years, like few years, the shows they try to imitate a show. I'm not gonna call the name of it, but it's all experimental, like you were saying. Yeah.
And to me, that's interesting
Yeah.
too. It's like it doesn't have to be what most
Yeah.
people would consider music. It's it's all
That's
sounds.
true.
It's just all sound.
Yeah. 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 That's true. Okay, great. What's one crucial piece of advice would you give someone interested in film scoring?
I would say, um, and actually, a lot of the advice isn't so much for new composers, but a lot of new filmmakers will ask me about, okay, well,
Hmm.
the placement of music. And one thing I always say is, I'm more of the idea of less is more, meaning you don't have to have
Hmm.
music in every 100% of the scenes or every scene.
Hmm.
Um, just use it sparingly. Use it when um, you feel that it adds to the visual. Because that's what it's there for. It's there to enhance the visual or enhance the feel of the scene, but it doesn't really have to be,
Yeah.
you know, in every scene. Sometimes
Yeah.
the biggest impact in a score is complete silence. And that's where you hear
Hmm.
like right before a climax of a scene, like it'll just be dead silence,
Yeah.
and
Very powerful,
you're
actually. Yeah.
hearing the breathing of the character, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden the music goes in. Well, the impact
That's
isn't the
true.
music, it's exactly what the character is feeling, at that crucial
Yeah. Yeah.
moment.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. That's good. So, so if somebody plays some music or and is interested to go to that field of film scoring, what should they, is there? Do you have tips? What should they do? What they need to go to school to? What tips do you recommend, or what do you recommend?
um, every artist path is different. So, it doesn't
Yeah.
mean that, okay, well, this famous person, they went to school and then they did this and that. Every
Yeah.
artist path is different. So I think these days there's so much information out there, you know.
Mm.
Um, I would say, it depends on what you play. Like if you're into orchestra music, it helps with school and stuff, because that's where your musicians are, and that.
Mm-hmm.
if you're a guitar player, um, or keyboard player, just do what it is that inspires you. Do the music that inspires you. Don't try to do something. I mean, it's always good to challenge yourself, but they always say go with what's you know, do what you do, and that's what you'll do great at,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know. Um,
Yeah.
when I first started out, I was talking to um, a mu a director of a music library, and they did,
Mm-hmm.
music for big shows and stuff. And I said, yeah, but I don't really do so. I mean, I play guitar. I'm a rock guitarist, you know. He said,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah. Yeah.
I said, I don't see where there would be a need for that. And they said, well, have you ever seen
Mm-hmm.
sports commercials or auto racing commercials or, action movies? And, you know, um, there is a market for the music that you do, whatever it is, you know.
Yeah.
And really the trick of it is just finding who uses the music that you create, you know.
That's true.
Um,
Yeah.
so there's always a market out there for what you do, you know.
Mm-hmm. That's a good piece of advice. Uh, can you share a moment when you faced a significant obstacle and how you overcame it?
I would say once I got going, um, going back to it's being asked to create something that you normally don't do. Like a lot of times
Mhm.
I work on films in, all over the world, and a lot of times they'll ask you, okay, well, we want it to sound like this culture, but we want it kind of Americanized too, you know. And
Yeah.
so I I decided, I'm not going to try to create music that is from another culture. I can imitate the
Yeah.
sounds, but it's not going to be authentic. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
Recently, I did a film from India, and they wanted
Mm.
instruments and music from their culture, and I said, okay, I'm not even going to try to do that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to say use some musicians, you know, to create pieces from your country, and then I'll create a
Mm-hmm.
score around it, you know, and that'll
Yeah.
keep the authenticity of the music, you know. Um, Again, you know, be honest with yourself on what it is that you do and what it isn't, you know. And the other thing you can do is
Yeah.
I found it's important to build a network of other musicians all over the world,
Mm-hmm.
and you can,
Yeah.
and basically that is your palette from which you can draw talent from others from. And it also
Yeah.
spreads work around, you know.
That's true.
Um, if I wanted an accordion player, there's no way I'd ever be able to pull that off. But I do know somebody who does, and I'm going to send them a track,
Yeah.
you know, um,
Yeah.
via digital file, and they're going to record their track on there, and there you have it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
not only have
Yeah.
you passed work along to somebody else, but you've also, had the integrity to the filmmaker saying, that's not something that I can do, but I can get it for you, you know.
Are there any tools or strategies you find indispensable in your work? I know all that tool stuff, but is there something that you really use or strategy?
Um, Everybody talks about the gear and oh, the gear, you have to have all
Yeah.
this. They're simply tools, you know.
Yeah.
I always say you could have a $3 million studio, but you still have to have an idea, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the best thing that you have is your ears, and um, starting with listen to the client, the director, the producer, get as much information, and then if you need to do some research on ideas, know where to find those ideas. And um, I would say your ears are the best tool that you have,
Hmm.
and um, listening pretty much to what others want instead of,
Yeah.
oh, I know exactly what you're after. I'll tell you what would be good for this film, and like, no.
And how do you stay motivated and inspired, especially during challenging times?
So, I talk to a lot of people where they are like, oh, I'm kind of having um, a time where I'm hard. It's hard to get inspired by current events, and I'm having writer's block, or one thing you can do is have a backup as far as know
Hmm.
where to go to find whatever it is that inspires you. Know what you have to
Yeah.
do. If you have like books that you read or certain music that you listen to, or if it's means going for a walk, I get a lot of great ideas just going out walking, but
Yeah.
know where to get your inspiration back when you need it, you know.
Yeah. Is there a dream project or collaboration you're still hoping
Oh, I'd
for?
love to work on Star Wars, for real Star Wars, but
Yeah. Yeah.
that probably might not happen. But oh, that would be cool.
Yeah. So we're getting close to the end of the show. Let's take a final clip from your reel before we jump into our last segment. Okay. Um, is there one last thought or piece of advice you'd like to share with our audience or listeners?
I think it would go back to, you know, always try to inspire others. You know, one of the greatest things is if you're an artist and you inspire another artist, I think that's the greatest compliment. For years I was
Hmm.
always like, oh, how do I make enough money to where I can quit my day job, and that's got to be the most
Yeah.
important thing. And now after a while I'm thinking, what's really important is encouraging others, and inspiring other artists. Again,
Hmm.
I believe that's how you and your art lives through others after you're gone. You know, people
Yeah.
never forget
It's your
people
legacy.
never forget those
Yeah.
people who inspired them. Um,
That's
I
true.
was thinking, the other day about, I really didn't get a whole lot of that. You know, um,
Hmm.
I even had a spouse where it's like, oh, you do your little music thing, you'll never do anything with that, you know. But I had a grandpa who, um, whenever I'd see him, he was always asking about music, and he played guitar too. And I've got old photos
Hmm.
of him in his World War II uniform playing guitar and stuff. And whenever I would, say goodbye to him, he'd shake my hand, and he'd have hidden a
Yeah.
$100 bill in in his hand, and I'm like, "What's this?" He goes, "Oh, hang on to that." Grandpa, I don't need that. He goes, "Oh no, it goes towards the studio fund."
Oh,
So
wow.
he was somebody.
He knew that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was thinking of the other day who, he was somebody who always encouraged me, and that's yeah, that's
Wow.
something you never forget, and neither do the people who you encourage and inspire. So,
Hmm.
it's very important, I think.
Yeah. It's very inspiring.
Mm.
Very inspiring. So, how can our audience connect with you or learn about your work?
I've got a YouTube channel. I'm always on somewhere on social media. If it's social media where I can do my shameless promoting, then I'm on there.
Are there any upcoming projects or collaborations you're excited about?
I've got a number of projects lined up for this year. One of them is a World War II real story about
Oh,
um, a um, the war in the Philippines, where a girl um, actually uh, escapes and lives with a group of people in the jungle for a year or two, and then till the war's over. So it's kind of like a action, romantic drama type
mhm.
of thing.
Yeah,
So
pretty
yeah.
cool. Pretty cool. And who would you like to thank or acknowledge for supporting you in your journey? You already touched on that, but is there anybody
Uh,
else other
Besides
than?
Grandpa, there's so many people, and I I appreciate the people who let me help them, so um, lots of people. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you today.
So what? Yeah. So what's next for you? You already mentioned about the films. Any traveling plans or anything in your life you'd like to share?
No, I never get to travel. I'm just always working. One thing I've been getting into lately is I've been asked to lecture in various schools about vocal production or how to set up, your first little recording studio or um, filmmaking groups where they're asking me to give talks about, the art of the placement of music in film. So I'm really enjoying doing
Yeah,
that.
that's amazing. Okay, so sadly we're at the end of the show. That's all, folks. Mike Hall, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.